Good morning, everybody. It's Jillian. Yeah, I wanted to do a Facebook Live yesterday, but there was too much going on. I was at the hospital for like 12 hours, waiting to see what the outcome was for a friend of mine that had a heart attack of sorts, and what they were going to do as far as the next thing. So anyways, yeah, that was pretty eye-opening. It's pretty scary when somebody gets a heart attack. And so yeah. So that was a long day yesterday, a very long day of being in the hospital and just dealing with that. So, today she's going to go through her quadruple bypass and we'll see what happens. But I am thinking about her. My husband's over there right now with them, and so I'm just kind of doing my thing here to take care of my dog, because my dog really needed someone yesterday, but I wasn't around, so I don't want to leave her alone again too much today. So anyways, so keep her in her prayers. But I wanted to focus on this tussle between communism and fascism, which is now makes perfectly good, perfect sense. When you put everything together, when it comes to what people are talking about, like the 1%, the globalist elite, the illuminati, all of the right-wing people expressing a fear of what is communism is what people are really, really in the right-wing party, like the Alex Jones crowd, the ones that are against big pharma. Who else? Like the real extreme Republicans. And then I guess why it is that all over mainstream television they talk about the Nazi Party all the time, World War II. Mainstream media is mostly left-wing, and I get that now. I mean, California and New York are the major hubs of left-wing ideology, and they're always talking about the fear of fascism. And I'm like, okay, fascism, right-wing, and then you have the KKK, and then you have all these white supremacy groups that are all about like white power and all that stuff. And then you have like the Black Panthers in the 1960s, and you have the hippie movement, and you have the hippie movement, the anti-war activists, and then the Vietnam War, and then the whole worry about the spreading of communism. Well, what is communism? I mean, and I was watching these videos. I was going through a whole history of communism and where it lays today. And they do talk about like the Berlin Wall and all of that. And what else? Stalinism, Leninism, China, North Korea, the thing with the Vietnam War, America getting involved with trying to stop communism. And then we have our own communist type of issues back in the 1960s with McCarthyism, with J. Edgar Hoover running files on people who happen to be communist or sympathize with communist principles. And then now you're seeing like the MLK Day, you're seeing, people were being assassinated that took these specific leadership positions, trying to propagate, of course, equality, of course, yes, and race relations and all the different isms. I mean, every single ism is just all about focusing on the differences and then projecting what somebody else is assuming, why or why not they pick you, or why they don't like you or something. And so it's like the pendulum seems to always swing way the other way here. And that seems what happens every 8 years. The pendulum swings way to the left, and then it swings way to the right, and then way to the left. And people are just like, dizzy from going back and forth. And then every single year or every single generation, as people keep procreating on very, very weak bodies, the fear of the left, the far left and the far right are becoming more pronounced. So now you're seeing a major tussle between communism versus fascism. And then we have the two-party system with the independents, basically an offshoot of the Democrats, but really it's an actual communist, like the Democrats are still catering and sympathizing with communism, so to speak, but the independents are truly what the far right fear most. And I didn't realize I was working in that extremist environment. Okay. And so it's been kind of awakening for me as far as looking at my politics, what I was involved with in California. Because when you're in California, you're surrounded by it. You don't know what you're in until you come out of it. And then you see another perspective. Because California is like ever pervasive. It is like enveloping. It's like everything about the socialism / communism, or communism not, has filled up every pore of your body when you think about when you're living in California or even in New York, because like the Bloombergs. And so I did more research. Like I researched what the independent movement was all about. I really didn't know what the hell I was doing back in 2003. It just seemed logical that we have this two-party system. Hey, Tiffany, it seems so logical with this two-party system. Okay. That there was that they were fighting against each other, and that we need to forego the two-party system and only go to the independents, and then find the similarities of Republican and Democrat. And that's what the independents were doing, that are capitalizing on the similarities, which is basically socialist medicine. Okay, because that's what is the equalizing force of communism, so to speak, between the two parties. Because there are fundamental differences between Democrat, Republican, less taxes on the Republican side, more taxes. What does that translate into? Taking more from you to then feed the collective. Okay, as far as the left wing. Okay, so left wing is more taxes, taking more from you to feed the collective, and the Republican is like taking less taxes out and making it more individual. You choose where you want to put your money versus somebody else dictating. And then we have this back and forth every 8 years. We're having more taxes taken out, less taxes taken out. And then we have less social programs, more social programs. Blah, blah, blah. And it's just becoming so like monotonous. And then people have now along with those two ideologies, now you have really, really, really unhealthy people who now want more. So it's going to then cater and contribute to the communist / socialist / communist. Because when you have so many people with lack of ability and they can't contribute as much, but they still want the same benefits and the same, the same benefits, the same privileges, but yet they're not really contributing as much. That's where you see then people who are very able-bodied in the fascists, like the Donald Trump people, the Republicans, becoming disenchanted with those that really can't perform at the level that they can perform. And that's where you have the conflict and the clash. And so now it all makes sense why I see so many flipping documentaries about Nazi Germany on the History Channel. It makes sense why it is that most of mainstream media, as far as NBC, CBS, ABC, PBS, NPR, MSNBC, CNN, is all majorly left-wing, and why all the programming on TV is majorly left-wing, because we're seeing now more people becoming disabled. And when you have more people becoming disabled, they're going to want the state to step in and pick up where, fill in or compensate for their lack of ability. And so when I listed out the succession of a healthy person all the way to a person that's dead, as far as mixed economies, capitalism is where everybody is individually responsible for themselves and they contribute based upon their specialty. That's what really capitalism is all about, is that you have a specialty in something that you can offer to someone that's willing to buy it and give you money for it, or give you another service that you need to maintain your level of existence, your expectation. And so, but now we have people who don't have specialties, that don't have the ability to have a specialty to offer something to people. So then they actually take part in companies and then take pieces of the pie. Now that is socialism. That's where you're giving, instead of 100% of an idea and taking care of it 100%, you're only now giving really like maybe 30% of your ability to a company. So your specialty in a company is like you're an admin or something. So that's your contribution to that company. And then the government takes taxes to then contribute and distribute to the collective to then keep infrastructure going. Because yes, when you have so many people, see, the more people you have, the more infrastructure you need, the more diversity, the more social programs, the more catering to people's abilities and lack thereof. And that's why you have mixed economies, because you have different levels of decomposition in people who have more skills here, less skills here, strengths and weaknesses. And it becomes very convoluted and almost confusing. But now it makes sense on the Jilly Juice, because now on the Jilly Juice, it's like you're turning more capitalistic, because you now have major amount of ability and you have a specialty in something. You can actually hone in on a specialty in something and really offer something to somebody without somebody taking too much of the piece of the pie. Okay, you can be a pure taking in 100% of the pie versus giving it off. Now, I do give away pieces of my pie to people as far as, you know, some of my book proceeds, because, you know, I'm still creating my own community and support, because I can't do, I mean, I could do everything, but I want to bring people in, because at some point I'm not going to be able to, or it's going to be so convoluted and so diverse that it's nice to have someone that could just do something and have my mind be taken off of this so I can deal with this. And so, you know, that's why I've subscribed to more of a socialist type of model as far as my company, because I don't take all the proceeds. When Kevin helps him with the book and we both submit the manuscript together, he's going to get 50% of the pie, because he gets 50%. He's putting energy that equals 50%. So I'm willing to do that. So we both give 100% of our ability, okay? And he's still strengthening his ability. So that's kind of what like socialism is. It's a kind of mixture of the two. But pure capitalism is where you have the ability to demonstrate your capability or your specialty, and somebody finds it marketable. So that's with 100% healthy, you know, people and 100% healthy economy. But we're finding with socialist medicine that people are not rising above their station. If anything, they're degrading, and they still want to live and have access to resources and benefits and privileges the same as everybody else, but they're not contributing at the same level as other people, but still expect to have the same privileges. And that's where you're seeing the clash. And it's crazy now that you think about it, now that when you actually look at it from that point of view. And that's why you're seeing the fascist, the right wing, okay, what people deem as, you know, because that's what Hitler did, is he tried to take away all the weak people in society, which was the concentration camps, the firing lines, the rounding people up and everything. And that's what people are afraid. That's what the communists are afraid of, that happening. But then they are killing people who don't subscribe to communist ideology. So in essence, they've taken on the characteristics of a fascist person. Because if you don't buy into a communist philosophy, then you look at all the activism. You look at the Antifas, the anti-fascists, who take on the characteristics of someone like Stalin, someone like, you know, Hitler, because then they start violently forcing you to take on a ideology that you don't subscribe to. So then you don't even know the difference between Antifa and an extreme right wing, because they now share the same characteristics. It's about now force versus let's just get healthy. Because when you have so much oxytocin, when you have so many imbalances in your hormones, you're going to then destroy yourself and other people. And that's how I see the right wing, right wing, like really fascist right wing, to a very communist left wing. When you have that extreme characteristic of both those ideologies, then it becomes destructive to a society. And so it comes down to balance. And now socialism is, yes, more balanced, but when you're dealing with socialist type principles, okay, and you have now socialist medicine, it is going to turn into a more communist society, because the strong are not going to be very kind to the weak. And that's where you see the clash. And so my utopian, my projection with the whole jilly juice is to make everybody 100% healthy, where they're not procreating. So if you're procreating, then it's guided carefully. Reproduction is guided carefully. And that's what this whole New World Order, 1%, Illuminati, communist, whatever it is, I don't know if it's communist, if it's fascist, one of the two, communist, fascist, and I can't tell. See, here's the thing, 1%, New World Order, the global elites, they could be either right-wing fascist extremists, or they could be way left-wing, because they both still have a very extreme characteristic of where they want to take out anyone that doesn't believe in them. So actually, when you think about it, like statism is like communism, because the state now is taking over and filling in where people are leaving off because they can't seem to contribute and measure up. And so when someone says, ooh, all these statists out there, because I see, or statists, or however you want to call them, they're into anarchy. And when you're into anarchy, it means that you don't want the state coming in and stepping in. But when you have anarchy, you don't have any kind of order, and so it's all chaotic. But then you have the right wing fascists, that a group of people that are very, very capable, very, very strong, who don't like the weak and look at certain, and that's where racism comes from, where the perception of somebody who's strong, who thinks that this person of color or this person's, sexual orientation or gender is weak, and they want nothing to do with it, because it would then dilute their gene pool and make it weaker. And that's the perception of the way, way extreme right. So now it makes sense, because I'm thinking, like, why does the KKK and the white supremacists almost seem like they're way left? Well, it's not that they're way left. They just have the same characteristics, because you've gotten to such an extreme that now you want to kill anyone that's not like you. And then you guys are down no different. You're basically the same in a way how you manifest your principles. But even though your principles are different, the way you manifest them and force them down people's throats is the same. So then you can't tell who's who anymore, except for the labels that someone has put on you. So they put the label on Trump as a fascist, as a racist, and then his affiliation with Russia, who's a socialist, and there's communism in there. So it's now become so convoluted, we don't even know who's what. But what has kept us relatively balanced, even with Congress or the House full of communists, so to speak, major left wing, and then you have the Senate totally right wing, okay, and then you have a president totally right wing. Even though you have that disparity between the two, the Constitution with its amendments, yes, has been that it's a live document, yes, but it's been that balancing force that people have referred to. However, all the different amendments after the first 10 amendments, the fundamental amendments, have probably diluted a little bit, or maybe even more so, because then it becomes like the whole 1964, the discrimination. There's so many other amendments from after the first 10 amendments that now it's, who knows what the Constitution is going to actually look like in the future. And so really all you can do, here's my solution, here's my vision, so you understand, because there's one thing to point out the problem, because let me tell you, Greta Thunberg, whatever her name is, and all these different activists out there point out all the problems out there. Okay, the 5G was, there's a problem. It's not really a problem, but they're pointing out all these different problems based upon their weaknesses, but no one's really offering a solution except to force somebody to stop this, avoid this, and or take part in this. Okay? And so that's not really the answer, but that's the only thing that these activists know, is to stop someone from doing something or force their ideology down their throat. And so this is my vision as far as the future, is that we have a capitalist market with specialties rather than focusing on ability. Because if you have a specialty, it already is assumed you have the ability, because for you to be specialized in something, you have the ability to do it. Okay? So specialty is more explaining that you are very good at, I don't know, building computers. You're very good at, and you're able to build a computer, you're able to offer your expertise, you have a good marketing campaign, you know how you have access to resources, you can get the metal and all the different semiconductors and all these different things to put together a computer, and then you can sell it to somebody. And then if you have so many orders that you can't handle, then you bring in people who are willing to specialize in assembling these computers, and they get paid, you know, based upon whatever. And you know, I mean, and that's kind of, then that's how companies are made, right? And then it becomes more socialist. But it's still, but then you still have people who are 100% healthy. They're not, you know, I mean, they're not. So here's the thing with the Georgia Guidestones. I mean, it's about guiding reproduction carefully, now taking the population down from like 7 million to 500 million. That's a lot of people gone, okay? I mean, living symbiotically with nature. I mean, there's all these tenets of the Georgia Guidestones that would assume that the people are totally healthy and no one is imbalanced. Okay, and that is a pure capitalist, you know, market. You know, and 500 million would be enough to have a company to build a computer that doesn't break down, because you see that in companies where you have a phone. I paid $86 for this phone through Verizon, and then somebody has a $40 a month phone, but their phone is maybe like $200, but it breaks down every couple of years because they're paying less in the monthly. So the company makes up the difference in making you buy a phone every couple of years. But I haven't had to buy a phone in a while. I've had this phone the longest time, and it's because I'm paying on a plan. Okay, that's like, well, it's a contract, but I'm paying $86. But I don't have to keep buying phones all the time. So what if we had an economy, a country, or a society of 500 million, where you don't have to keep buying cars all the time? You don't have to keep buying, you know, where you can have a society where things last, and then people are so balanced and they're contributing equally to an economy, equally to a society, and they're guiding reproduction carefully. And then there is some kind of oversight to make sure that someone isn't, you know, not taking care of themselves. Because really, you know, the J juice, you know, when you actually do the J juice and you see the results, you're not going to want to let your body go down that road again. You're not going to want to feel as crappy as you did, triggering diagnoses. So you wouldn't really need any oversight. But, you know, there's always a few that say, I don't like this society, especially when you're when a society is in transition and they go off into the forest and live off grid. Okay. And then you have to have some kind of drones go out there and look for the heat seeking, you know, and look for them and say, okay, you either conform or you're done. And it's like, so that's why we have a society we have, is that we give people enough rope to hang themselves. And I actually learned that from Jack Nicholson when I was a feminist, and he was just like, oh, the feminists, we give them enough rope to hang themselves. And I'm like, and I was freaking out. But that was when I was like, you know, super left-wing feminist Democrat in California, and flipping out on Jack Nicholson saying that. And everyone just, you know, lost their minds when he said that. That was a quote. I look it up because I remember that was something that was said back in the 90s. So at least, you know, I want to have a vision for the future, because that's how you then create the future, is you have a vision, but But you have to have more than just a vision. You have to have a solution. Okay? And so when I finally figured out what I was working with in California and who I was working with and why and and they came under a different name. Okay, so when you figure out what you're working with and then what your vision is, then you have a solution. Then now you have to watch everything play out. You really have no control in what goes on out there. You only have control here. And you're going to have to know what you're working with and adapt to the changes, because there's going to be so many changes, but you're going to be immune to it, so to speak. I mean, no, it's not like you're being immune, but you're not going to be caught up in the surge. Okay? You're going to take yourself out of the war. Okay? You're going to realize that, yes, you need to be voting for Republican ideologies when it comes to America, because you don't want to have fascism and you don't want to have communism, the two extremes. So you've got to get involved. You can't afford to sit back, but you don't have to get caught up in the activism where you're protesting unless everybody's body, mind, and spirit are actually under attack. And that's when somebody goes into a gas chamber, okay, and they're gassed. That's the body, mind, and spirit being under attack, which is what we stopped in Europe. That was extreme right-wing fascism, okay? And that's why you're seeing people likening, Donald Trump and Obama to a right-wing fascist, because that's the only thing that people really recognize as somebody bad. But remember, there's Stalin, there's all these different Lenin, there's all these different left-wing communists that did just as much damage as Nazis did, but somehow Hitler is the most prominent figure, as everyone's referring to as like the enemy, the symbolism of the enemy or of a devil or something. Okay, so you have to get involved. Republican is probably the closest ideals to American principles, even though, yes, people can potentially, yes, trigger extremism, but Republican ideals are probably the most closest to American principles, to the Constitution, because it still gives you the freedom of speech. It still gives you, the right to congregate if you want to. The freedom of the press, holy crap. I mean, oh my God. But, I'm allowed to get on Facebook. I'm allowed to speak my mind. I'm allowed to put out a protocol. Yes, I was attacked by the left-wing media, like super attacked. But then we had the government, the balancing forces, to say, okay, are you putting out a protocol that is antibiotic that'll kill people? We need to make sure, and then please substantiate all of your claims that you've put out there on the internet. And then we have marketing guidelines. That's where the FTC comes in and says, okay, Federal Trade Commission says you cannot make these kind of claims without having this science, especially if you are using words like cures and diagnoses in your language. And so now it's understanding the laws of your society, the laws of your body. Natural law will always trump man-made law, but if man-made law ever crossed the lines and started crossing people's lives where it became more deadly, then everybody would rise up, because they would all have some kind of stake, because everybody wants to live. The communists want to live, and so do the right-wing fascists want to live. We don't want to cater to those two extreme ideologies. You want to be somewhere in the middle. Okay, especially when you're dealing with people who still are aging and degrading. You don't want to completely abandon those that are still sick, because they're still your friends, they're still your family, there's still people in your society that do contribute a certain piece of the pie. But what the ultimate future is, from what I've seen in the Georgia Guidestones, is eventually they're going to want a very, very able-bodied society that is contributing equally, where nobody is dying aggressively or dying at all, I guess. No one's just reproducing willy-nilly, because you're seeing kids are being, reproduced, and they're not up to par. They've got so many issues, and they are a burden to the economy, yes. So yeah, I mean, you're seeing the thing with the viruses out there in China, and you're seeing all of the people that are anti-vax, okay? You're going to see a lot. Is it intentional? I'm not even going to speculate, because there are unintended consequences that happen. There's unintended consequences that happen. Doesn't mean it's intentional, and you're never going to know or prove it, and it's not even worth knowing or proving or trying to substantiate it, because it's not going to make a difference. Chicken or the egg, who cares? You have the Jilly juice. The Jilly juice is going to help you release the excess, okay, and take in what your body needs. You need to have fatty acid. You need to have amino acids. You need to have prohormones. You need to have minerals. You need bacteria, okay? And then you need to make sure your body balances out correctly. And if you have weaknesses, you got to deal with them and strengthen them. And that is a painful process. Okay. So when I was at the hospital yesterday, hanging out, waiting to see the outcome of a friend's heart attack, you know, I mean, on the wall, it has like a whole pain scale, you know, 0 to or no pain at all to all the way to 10, where you're just like unbearable. When you're unbearable, it means that you have so many weaknesses the body is trying to repair, and you're not giving it what it needs. And then you have mild pain in the middle. The body is relatively weak, but you know, you have recourse, you have time, you have some kind of insurance, so to speak. And so, but you know, it's like we have to cater to that until, I don't know, until viruses just take out everybody this week. I don't know. Okay, so that was my realization. And yeah, I was a bit shocked a couple weeks ago, or like a couple days ago, when I realized what my contribution to destabilizing America was in California. And it's crazy. It's crazy. Because like I said, things get rebranded. Okay? Communism, they say, oh yeah, the fall of communism. No, the communism has not fallen. I mean, China is still a communist country with a little bit of free market, not really free market, with a little bit of what do you call it, socialist innovation or controlled innovation. I would think that America has more free market innovation, but they still have their government controls, because I still had to go and substantiate, and I had a government come down on me before I started. Because believe me, if it really was free market innovation, then I wouldn't have been questioned by the authorities when I first rolled out Jelly Juice. So there is still a controlled innovation, but if I could prove that this wasn't poisonous, that's fine. But I'm still not a doctor, so I can't really, you know, instruct, but I really can't anyways, because I don't want to have that. I don't really want to have that responsibility of being somebody's, you know, right there go-to whenever they have a problem, because you're gonna have a problem because you have weaknesses, and I don't want to be sucked into somebody's drama, because let me tell you, sickness is drama. It is probably the biggest drama ever you're gonna see. And so, you know, when I was questioned by the authorities and then basically left alone because nothing was deemed poisonous, still I'm not going to charge people for being their coach, because that's too much. That's just too much energy. I'm not trying to piecemeal. What I really want to teach people is that you can be in charge of your own health. Okay. And so that's the point of the J juice, is that you can be in charge of your own health and understand what these symptoms mean. And then you can ultimately see the other side as far as great, wonderful, well-balanced health. But things get rebranded. Let me cycle back to what my original point was, is that communism gets rebranded. And so when I discovered that who it is I was affiliated with in California, in San Francisco, for at least 4 years and taking part, I didn't realize I was taking part in the most extreme left you can think of. And this is like the whole thing with the Black Panthers, okay? Extreme left, very violent, all that stuff. And that's why you're seeing a lot of bitterness from certain interest groups that are so hateful towards Trump and everything else, because they've been influenced by the extreme left and mobilized. And then so the extreme left also target minority groups. The extreme left target minority groups to then create a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then you have people who are very able-bodied who don't like how the extreme left has basically infantilized a lot of the different minority groups and catered to their weaknesses. And then that's where you see the clash. And it's a lot of political monopoly, a lot of political strategy. It is using psychotherapy and social therapy and major manipulations to get people to act in a specific way to then substantiate political theories that are out there. And that's where the Jilly Juice has you step away from that, where you don't get caught up in the political manipulation. You know that it's out there in the right wing and in the left wing. But, you know, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights is that balancing force, but how it gets interpreted and all of that now comes into play. But no matter what I'm working towards in my world is where I have my specialty, which is understanding the body, the Jilly Juice, and your ability to heal yourself, even with the help of socialist medicine, to where then you get off of socialist medicine, and now you're 100% able to contribute to the economy, contribute to yourself, contribute to America, keep American ideals so strong, where you don't have to revert to right-wing fascism or have that be a perception. You are tolerant of those that are, that have lesser ability. But ultimately, if you are living indefinitely, you're going to see people reproducing on bodies that are so weak eventually take themselves out of the genetic line. And you're going to have to watch that. That's going to be the hardest thing about being on Jilly Juice, is watching people reproduce themselves out of the genetic line. Because remember, too much reproduction completely shuts down or takes away that genetic line, because reproduction comes from weaknesses. And then our socialist economy caters to those that have, different abilities. Okay. But you're going to have to watch that. And it's going to be tough. Let me tell you, with me knowing this knowledge, and I'm around people that are suffering, and I want to give this to them. And sometimes I do. I don't say ram it, but I do give my opinion. And some people don't want to hear it. They're like, I don't want to hear it. So they have a captive audience. They're like, dude, get away. And I'm like, okay, I get it. Sorry. Blah, blah, blah. So it's going to be very difficult to keep your mouth shut. It's going to be so difficult to keep your mouth shut. But you got to let Mother Nature take its course, because, you put your information out there. People see it if you're doing it and you're putting your information out there. So you're giving people the opportunity. But to really speak to someone on a personal level, you got to let them come to you. And that's the hardest thing about J-Juice, is not going to people and selling this. Even though you want to save them, you want to give them everything that you have as far as your whole panoramic view of everything. They're just trying to survive. They're just trying to eat another day, trying to get to the next day, trying to get through the next illness, through the next procedure, through the next thing. And they're not worried about the future too much. They're worried about only the here and now. And I understand that, and that still is difficult for me, because I know what they could have, but you still got to do the work. You still got to go through the pain. You still got to do what you got to do. You still got to go through those levels of healing. And I'm on my 4th year. I'm going on my 4th year. I think actually October 2016 to October 2017, 2018, 2019. So yeah, it's like 4 years. Okay, I've been on this really about 4 years. So that's a good time. That's basically like going to college. It's getting a 4-year degree. It's like getting a bachelor's. Okay. And but that's how brainwashing works. I guess it takes 4 years, brainwashing. But that's how learning something new takes about 4 years. And so when someone, goes through college, they've accomplished something. And so, so going through the Jilly Juice is like getting a 4-year degree. When you get to a point where you're 100% healed and sealed, where you understand now how the whole world works as a whole, and even history, okay? And now you know that you really have no control over all of these politics except to go vote, to keep the ideas of what you believe in alive, especially if it's pro-life. and you follow the laws of society, you follow the laws of your body, you stay alive. If the laws of society start then encroaching upon the laws of life, that's when collectively everybody, the Democrat and Republican and communist and, you know, fascists will all rise up together and fight against something. Okay? So, yeah. All right. So just understand there's a bigger picture going on, but the politics is a manifestation of the mixed economies in your body. Okay? And so that's why we want to get everybody like 100% healthy, getting your hormones calmed down so you're not taking extremism to the left or to the right. You're somewhere in the middle and you stay alive indefinitely. And then we can create a world, which I guess is the Georgia Guidestones, where you have 500 million people all contributing with their specialty 100%, with their specialty. And no one person is taking more of the pie because they have the 100% ability to contribute. That's what we're looking for as far as the Jilly Juice world. And it's going to be a while. People are going to be dropping like flies around you, and you're going to have to deal with it. It's going to suck, but you know it's inevitable. Okay? Good luck, everybody. Talk to you later. Bye.